The burning death of Oda Nobunaga, betrayed at the temple. He nearly unified Japan. Then, his own general burned him alive in a burning temple in the heart of Kyoto. One of Japan's most powerful men met a death so shocking, so brutal, that it would be remembered for centuries to come. Oda Nobunaga, the warlord who almost ended a century of bloodshed, a man of unmatched ambition and ruthless vision. But on that fateful morning, he was betrayed, not by a foreign enemy, but by a trusted general, a man he had elevated himself. This is the story of how ambition, arrogance, and betrayal led to the burning death of Oda Nobunaga, a death that changed the future of Japan forever. The year was 1582. For more than a century, Japan had been locked in endless war. The Sengoku period, the Warring States era, a time when power was won by the sword and lost by a whisper. Daimyo fought daimyo, castles rose and fell, alliances formed and shattered, assassins moved in the shadows, and no man, no family could ever feel truly safe. Honor and treachery danced together. Glory was fleeting. Survival was everything. But amid this chaos, one name began to rise: Oda Nobunaga, a brilliant strategist, a ruthless commander, a visionary leader. Born in 1534, the second son of a minor lord, a boy with little expectation of greatness. Yet from a young age he was different, wild, reckless, unconventional. His dress strange, his manners crude. The other lords laughed. They called him the Fool of Owari. But beneath that rough exterior burned a mind sharper than any blade. He watched the chaos of Japan. He saw the futility of old ways, and he dreamed of a new order, a unified land, under one rule, under his rule. Nobunaga's rise began with blood. In 1551, his father was poisoned. A power struggle followed. Nobunaga seized control of his clan. He crushed his rivals and set his sights beyond Owari province. While other lords clung to tradition, Nobunaga embraced innovation. He was one of the first warlords to see the true power of firearms. Matchlock guns brought by Portuguese traders, slow to load but devastating. While others scoffed, Nobunaga trained his men. He drilled them relentlessly. He redesigned tactics to use volleys of gunfire, walls of bullets, Krikon's Ka-Rotor Samurai, shattering old tactics. In battle after battle, Nobunaga's forces proved unstoppable. But it was not just his mastery of gunpowder. Nobunaga was a master of psychology. He used propaganda, fear, deception. He recruited the best minds, engineers, merchants, spies, and with each victory, his legend grew. His most famous triumph came in 1571, the siege of Mount Hiei, a mountain fortress, home to the powerful warrior monks of the Tendai sect. For centuries, these monks had wielded influence, untouchable, protected by their religious status, but Nobunaga saw them as a threat. He laid siege to the mountain, and when the walls fell, he ordered the unthinkable, the slaughter of every monk, man, woman, child. Flames consumed the temples, smoke darkened the sky. A message was sent to all of Japan. No one was beyond Nobunaga's reach. No tradition was sacred, no power was safe. By the early 1580s, Nobunaga controlled vast swaths of Japan, from Kyoto to the Pacific coast. Only a few great clans remained: the Takeda, the Uesugi, the Mori. But one by one, they fell before his might. His armies, disciplined and modern, his leadership unmatched, victory seemed inevitable. Japan's long war was nearing its end, and Nobunaga stood on the brink of uniting the land under his rule. But power breeds enemies, and in Nobunaga's case, the greatest threat was not a rival lord, but a man within his own ranks. Akechi Mitsuhide. Mitsuhide, a trusted general, loyal, brilliant, respected. For years, he had served Nobunaga faithfully, winning battles, expanding the realm. But beneath the surface, something festered. resentment, humiliation, old insults, real or imagined. Stories tell of public scoldings, of honors withheld, of ambitions denied. And in the ruthless world of Sengoku Japan, such wounds could be fatal. Mitsuhide wrestled with his conscience, but the bitterness only deepened. And as he watched Nobunaga's star rise ever higher, a dark resolve began to form. By the summer of 1582, tensions simmered. Nobunaga, confident in his power, grew bold, perhaps too bold. He left his main army behind. He traveled to Kyoto, a place of culture, of politics, of fragile peace. His destination, the Honnoji temple, a quiet place, a sanctuary, accompanied by only a small guard. There, he would rest, plot his next moves, complete his plans for unification. But Mitsuhide saw opportunity, a chance to strike, to change his fate, and to alter the course of Japan. This was the beginning of the burning death of Oda Nobunaga. The sky over Kyoto was still dark, the city quiet, its alleys asleep, its shrines unbothered. But at Honnoji, flames of destiny were about to be lit. Akechi Mitsuhide had made his decision, and there would be no turning back. Before sunrise, his army moved. Samurai under his banner marched through the streets in silence. No drums, no horns. Only the sound of armor brushing against armor, blades catching the first glimmer of morning. Civilians who stirred were ordered back inside. Those who resisted, silenced. Mitsuhide had one target, and it wasn't conquest. It was execution. At the Honnoji temple, Oda Nobunaga was waking, or perhaps already awake. We'll never know. But what we do know is that he was not prepared. His guards were few, his weapons ceremonial, and his faith in Mitsuhide still intact. Until the arrows flew. The temple gates shattered. Soldiers swarmed in. Steel clashed with startled resistance. Nobunaga's men, loyal but outnumbered, fell one by one. Screams echoed through the courtyard. Steel met flesh. And in the heart of the chaos, Nobunaga stood alone. He knew what this was. Betrayal. And he knew who was behind it. Mitsuhide. Oda Nobunaga, the Demon King. The man who scorched Mount Hiei. The man who shattered clans. The man who had made all of Japan tremble. Now stood surrounded, bloodied, cornered, betrayed, but not broken. He refused capture. Wounded, he retreated into the inner chamber of Honnō-ji. There, surrounded by sacred scrolls and relics, he made his final decision. He would not die by a traitor's hand. He would not give his enemies that glory. Instead, he would choose his death. Some say he performed seppuku, the ritual suicide of a samurai. Others say he called for fire, that he himself set the temple alight, that he laughed as the flames climbed the beams, that he roared into the inferno, a death of fire to match the fire he had unleashed on Japan. Outside, Mitsuhide's men stood and watched. Honnoji burned, the roof collapsed, sparks shot into the sky, ash rained down over Kyoto. The most powerful man in Japan was gone. But Mitsuhide's victory was short. He seized power, declared himself ruler, but in just 13 days, he too would fall. And struck down by another rising force, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. The land would remember the betrayal, the fire, the man who nearly ended the warring states, and the general who ended him. And Oda Nobunaga's death marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, because from his ashes, a new Japan would rise. But the scars he left, the terror, the ambition, the legacy, would never burn away. This was the fall of Honnoji, the fire that consumed a warlord, and the betrayal that changed Japan forever. The flames at Honnoji had died, but the smoke still hung in the air, across Kyoto, across Japan, across history. Oda Nobunaga, the man who bent an era to his will, was dead, betrayed, burned, erased. But his dream did not die with him. Because just as fire consumes, it also spreads. And from Nobunaga's ashes, a new warlord rose. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a name history would never forget. once a sandal bearer, a peasant with no noble blood, no name, no legacy. But Hideyoshi had watched, he had learned, from Nobunaga's brilliance and from his mistakes. When word of Nobunaga's death reached him, Hideyoshi didn't weep, he didn't hesitate. He moved, swiftly, ruthlessly, exactly as Nobunaga would have. He made peace with enemies, rallied Nobunaga's loyalists, and turned his army around, marching day and night toward revenge. 13 days, that's all Akechi Mitsuhide had. 13 days as ruler of a broken dream. Then came the reckoning, then the Battle of Yamazaki. Akechi's forces dug in, they braced for attack. But Hideyoshi was faster, sharper, fueled by fury. Mitsuhide crushed Mitsuhide's army, and Mitsuhide himself? Hunted, cornered, killed, cut down by bandits, his body left in the mud, unmourned, unmarked, unworthy. And so, the traitor was gone. But the question remained, who would finish what Nobunaga started? Hideyoshi had the answer. He would. Not as a shadow of Nobunaga, but as a new force, a new vision, one forged not from noble birth, but from relentless ambition. He didn't claim to be shogun, he couldn't, but he did what no one else had. He unified Japan, not just with armies, but with reforms, with land surveys, with diplomacy, with fear. He brought the warlords to heel. He froze social classes, he disarmed the peasants, and he built a castle so vast, so magnificent, Osaka Castle, a symbol of power, of peace, and of the dream Nobunaga had once dared to dream things. But even Hideyoshi couldn't escape the truth. Power in Japan was never permanent. When he died in 1598, the fragile peace cracked. Factions emerged, alliances crumbled, and once again Japan stood at the edge of chaos. Until one final figure rose. Tokugawa Ieyasu, once a general under Nobunaga, then an ally of Hideyoshi. Finally, the man who ended the Sengoku era and became shogun. In 1603, Tokugawa established a new order, the Tokugawa shogunate, a dynasty that would rule Japan for over 250 years. Strict, isolated, stable, and in many ways, the world Nobunaga once imagined. But his name, Nobunaga, still haunted it. Whispered in temples, written in scrolls, feared, admired, never forgotten. The man who scorched mountains, who shattered the old ways, who stared into the heart of ambition and burned. Oda Nobunaga never wore the crown. He never ruled all of Japan. But he lit the match, and others carried the fire. Not this is his legacy. Not of peace, not of cruelty, but of change. The man who saw what could be and died for it. The burning death of Oda Nobunaga. 3 men, 3 visions, 1 future. Forged in blood, carved in fire, etched into the soul of Japan, forever.